How you guys doing? Apparently in one of my last videos I said that I was going to talk about how much is needed to retire. So I'm trying to put together a video talking about how much a couple or an individual at about 65 years old needs to retire in today's day and age. And obviously this is going to be difficult to do because everybody has way different financial circumstances. But I'm going to use an example that's fairly normal for what I do see. I'm going to talk about a typical Canadian couple or individual with an average income and see how much is needed to retire based on some pretty standard factors. And before I move on, I just want to quickly point out and thank a guy named James. If you've noticed recently, we've really tried to step up our video game. We've got Ryan, a good friend of mine, fellow comedian, super funny guy, adding his take on the videos, making them really funny. And we're trying to do a lot more videos and be more creative, but that unfortunately takes some time and effort. So what we're doing is we're asking, look, if you've gotten some benefit from our videos, please feel free to donate to our Patreon. We would love it so much. We got our first Patreon last week. His name is James. You're my boy, James. He's helped us out. He's donated $1.50 a month, which is absolutely fantastic. Every little bit counts, and we're so thankful. Just one time or monthly would be absolutely fantastic if you're getting some value from my videos. And if not, just say, you know what, Kent, screw off in the comments, and I'll take the hint. So let's look at a typical couple. They want to retire at 65 years old. They've worked their entire careers and they've done a good job saving, and they're worried and they're like, you know what, can we retire? How much money do we need to retire? And typically it's a lot less than most people think, depending on the circumstances. Because first things first is what we have to look at is, how much guaranteed income are they going to get? And some people have a pension, they've got CPP, they've got OAS. They don't even know how much these things are going to add up to. And then we look and we say, well, you only need to create like a small portion from your savings, and you've got way more than enough, hopefully, to cover all of that. But let's look at a very simple example. Spouse 1 made $75,000 a year. Spouse 2 made $60,000 a year. So they're taking home about $9,000 a month, good combined income. Let's say they had a $2,000 mortgage and they were saving about $1,500 a month. Well, now if they want to live the exact same life in retirement that they were when they were working, then they need $5,500 per month in retirement, because now they no longer have a mortgage and they no longer need to save for anything, which is great. So in total they need $5,500 a month, or $2,750 each after tax. So it's about $33,000 per year each after tax, or about $39,000 per year each before tax. So let's just say in this example, spouse 1 gets 100% CPP, so $1,215 per month, and spouse 2 gets 75% CPP. Most people don't get full CPP. Spouse 2 is getting $911 per month if they take it at 65. They're both going to get $615 per month of OAS at 65. So they have $3,356 that is sort of guaranteed for life, that's going to go up and index with inflation. So they've got $40,272 that is going to come in, but they need $68,000 per year to reach their goal. So they need $27,728 before tax, which generally, like coming out of their RSPs, that's what they're going to need every single year, indexed to inflation. So let's say we're assuming that both of them are going to live to 90 years old, which is kind of what I use unless people tell me that they want me to go under because of health concerns or something, or over 90 years old. And actually, the truth is that if you reach 65 years old, there's a greater than 50% chance that you're going to live to 90. So your life expectancy increases if you've gotten to 65 years old. And then we have to take into account that there's such a thing as inflation. And I mean, there is potentially going to be sort of extreme inflation, but that's a totally different video. Well, let's just pretend that inflation is normal and the stock market is normal. And I'm going to say, okay, what if we're generating a 5% rate of return and inflation is estimated to be 2%? Then your real rate of return is going to be 3%. How much money do you need to generate $27,728 per year in retirement? So you're going from this value down to zero at 90 years old. You have absolutely nothing left. Because I know a lot of retirees are like, okay, well, if I want to generate $27,000 dollars, then I need a portfolio that will generate that much money every single year in dividends or whatever. But why? I mean, you don't need that much money. You're allowed to deplete it over time. It's totally okay. You need less if you do that, right? So in this case, at a 3% real rate of return, they need $483,000 at the age of 65, split between their two RSPs. 2% real rate of return, $541,000, and 1% real rate of return, $611,000 that they're going to need. So you see the difference between, generating a little bit more, taking a little bit more risk with your investments. You've got a much better chance of making that money last. Obviously, if you live longer, you need more. If you don't live that long, you need less. So now let's talk about an individual. And truth be told, $5,500 per month in retirement is actually kind of on the higher side of what I see. Generally, I usually see somewhere in between about $4,000 to $6,000 per month per couple. But I mean, that just gives you an example. And plus, usually there's like a pension that comes into play or something like that. And maybe CPP is lower, or somebody took it at 60 or whatever, and then that doesn't enhance it quite as much. But obviously this is just a very simple example. Now let's look at an individual, and let's say that this individual wants $3,000 per month in retirement. Just a fairly typical example of what I would see, around $3,000 for an individual. If you don't have a mortgage payment anymore, you're not saving anything for retirement or whatever, that's actually pretty good to kind of live and pay your bills and have some expenses to travel and stuff. So in this case, I'm saying they're getting close to full CPP and OAS, so they've got $1,815 per month from CPP and OAS at 65, or $21,780. So they need an additional $20,200 per year for about $42,000 before tax that they're going to need to generate $36,000. And that depends on which province you're in, obviously. Some provinces have higher tax rates for lower income earners, and some provinces, so this is an average. Now this person, to generate that $20,200 per year from 65 until 90 at a 5% rate of return, so a 3% real rate of return, needs $352,000 in their RSP. If they've got $252,000 in their RSP and $100,000 in their TFSA, they're actually going to need less because their money is going to go farther because they're not paying as much tax. At a 4% rate of return, so 2% real rate of return, they need $395,000, and at a 1% real rate of return, $445,000. So as you can see, it's quite a bit more difficult for an individual to save as much for retirement as it is for a couple. That is in the case if both parties in the couple are working. Obviously, if there's only a single income earner, then makes it more difficult. It's hard to sort of support that kind of household in this day and age. You don't see it very often anymore, and people that can do it amaze me. Single mothers or single parents that can do it and survive. I don't know how you do it. My heart goes out to you. It's so awesome that you can make it work, and I feel for you, and can't imagine how tough it is sometimes. So let's talk about some ways that we can actually enhance this if you just need to enhance this. And a lot of cases, I talked about this in a previous video, that I see way too often is that people enter retirement with a huge mortgage that they're just not going to be able to pay. They have barely any equity in their house. They still have this huge mortgage, and they're just expecting that somehow their retirement income is going to be able to pay this, for the next 15 or 20 years. And it's absolutely going to just crush most retirement goals, because now you're thinking about an extra $1,500 or $2,000 a month that you need to pay or create out of your own personal savings. And it's just really not a situation I want to see people enter in. It's a really good idea to try and plan to be completely mortgage free, completely debt free by the time you retire, and it will make it so much easier for you to do that. So let's quickly talk about some things you can do to enhance this. You can increase the risk, which is obviously a risk. If you increase the risk of your investments, the hope is that you're going to get higher returns over time, which means that you need less, as you saw in the examples. You can reduce your fees and have the same risk. So if you reduce your fees from 2.5% to 1.5%, you should see an enhanced return of 1% just by paying less in fees. So that's an important distinction. That's an important thing to think about. You can reduce your taxes by income splitting. So if you're single, maybe a really good idea to get married right before you retire and just commingle and income split some of that stuff. Now you've got an extra CPP and OAS income coming in. That's awesome. But there are other ways to reduce taxes in retirement, especially with investments and how you structure the withdrawals. You can choose to take CPP and OAS at a later date, which will enhance your lifetime income. I've obviously talked about that in a bunch of videos. You can choose to work a little bit longer, retire later, work part-time, or I guess worst case scenario is reduce expenses and spending. Now another thing that I want to talk about lastly is a lot of people say, well, your expenses are going to go down as you age, and generally it sort of goes like this, where it's high, you retire, you're partying, you're traveling, you're giving her, and then you get really boring, and retirement sort of turns into kind of like COVID living. Even the travel is not very expensive. You go to Arizona and you just sit there and eat crackers or whatever and read books or whatever. It doesn't cost that much, but it can really increase in expenses as you age when sometimes some health issues arise. Maybe you need some long-term care help. Maybe you need nursing in the home. Maybe all of this stuff isn't covered by, insurance or whatever else, and you do see a lot of sort of extreme expenses in the later years. And so that's something to plan for, but if you do have a home, for example, well then that is obviously an asset that you can potentially sell to fund the movement into potentially a home, or to sell and maybe go into a rental for the remaining 10 years, and that will only deplete a little bit of that. Definitely depends on the scenario. This isn't perfect. Not everybody has CPP and OAS like this. You never know, but this is just sort of a general example I thought I'd give you guys. Obviously, if you want to retire earlier, it's going to take a lot more because your CPP and OAS are going to be lower, or you're going to need to have your RSP cover that for that 5 years. So that's going to deplete a lot of your assets in the early years. just some certain things to think about. At the end of the day, I would just suggest never stop working. You know, work until you die. Don't enjoy your money. Just I'm just kidding. You know, obviously, if you need help, if you're interested in working with us, there are lots of options. Just feel free to reach out to us. We'll let you know. Check our website, k4financial.ca, and if you haven't already, please subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.